Why do customers choose your product? Is it faster? Does it have the best features? Or is it priced better than your competitors? Don't kid yourself. These are areas where your competitors can also reach parity. So, what makes a product stand out? What makes it become the product customers genuinely love and can't imagine living without? Not only will you find out in this episode, you'll also learn about the framework to make it happen. Our expert is Dr. Nesrine Changuel. She has spent over a decade building products used by millions at Google, Spotify, and Microsoft. She's the creator of the Delight framework that helped teams at these companies systematically build emotional connections into the products. She now teaches this methodology at business schools, including INSEAD and ESIC, and her recent book is titled Product Delight, which describes these proven methods. If you're listening to us and would rather watch the video version, simply go to our YouTube channel, search for Product Mastery Now on YouTube. Let's jump in and learn about the power of products that make emotional connections right after this.
How can you unlock your full potential as a product manager? We're sharing the product management insights you need. They are based on the 7 research-backed knowledge areas for product mastery. You'll learn to create products customers love, enhance your influence, and elevate your career. Welcome to Product Mastery Now, hosted by Dr. Chad McAllister, product management professor, practitioner, and your guide.
Nesrine, thank you so much for joining us.
Hi, Chad. Excited to speak today.
Likewise, excited that we can get together and talk about something I think is a very key part of product development, is this emotional aspect. Something I was introduced to kind of just by circumstance as I was working with customers and recognizing when they come back and they talk in words that you go, wow, we've created something that actually is making a connection with them deeper than I expected. First, what do you mean when you say product delight? What are we talking about?
Yeah. So I'm very happy that we're talking about this topic because you know what? Most people agree on the fact that we should delight our users. I think it's a common word. We see it a lot. It even became like a bit of a buzzword. So I'm very happy that we're talking about this because actually, even if everyone agree on the concept, very little know exactly how to do it. And I'm excited that we're talking about this now. So when we talk about delight, at least from my perspective, it is the concept of creating products that connect with users on the emotional levels. What it means that when we build products, of course, we need to build products that solve for problems, create functionality, they are productive. But it's really important that while working and building those products, we need to take into consideration the emotional needs of our users. Why do they use this product? What's the main reason for using this product, not only from a functional perspective, but also from an emotional perspective? And if we create products that addresses both, let's say the functional needs and the emotional needs, then we're creating an emotional connection, and that's when we reach the concept of delight that we're talking about today.
Fantastic. Yeah, it really can be a competitive advantage that others miss. Maybe an example would be helpful here. Is there a specific product that you could share with us that you think really embodies this delight aspect?
To be honest, if you think about your best product, it's very likely that it is a good example of delight in there. So let me give you at least some that I personally worked on. So if we take Spotify, for example, which is a very well-known product, and I had the privilege to work on Spotify as a product leader for many years. So many people would go to Spotify to listen to music. And listening to music or podcast or audiobook or whatever, these are functional needs, right? However, many people, including me, sometimes open Spotify not to listen to a specific song or track, is to feel less lonely, or to feel connected, or to be more productive, because that's a way how I love working. So these are, on the other side, what we call emotional needs as well. So it's really important, and that's what we've been doing while building Spotify. It's important that we create features that not only solve for the functional need, and we have been, of course, improving the search engine to make sure that you can find your track very quickly when you're searching for a specific song, but also we want to feel the product, make the product feel personal, like Discover Weekly, for example, or Spotify Jam, like the ability to listen in a room with your community or with your friend, or collaborative playlists. So the idea is to create a product that is a catalog of features that solve for both dimensions.
Good. Yeah. So I was thinking about how I relate to Spotify as you were talking about that. And I use Spotify primarily to help me concentrate better when I'm trying to get work done, right? And I'll find my playlists that are instrumental, things I like. But then I do find myself sometimes going, oh, I really like that. And I will go look at the artists on Spotify to just learn more about them and in some way kind of at least have a little connection just because I have some knowledge of who they are now. And I think I would probably miss that if that wasn't there, right? It's a reason for me to go back to Spotify and look into that more. Okay, good example. Can you walk us through kind of the highlights of your Delight framework so that we know what the components are? We can think about putting this into practice.
Yeah. So I'm calling it the Delight model because it goes into 4 steps. And these are 4 key and very important steps that I think are quite simple as well, that every product leader or any organization can follow without having to change their ways of working or their adapted method or whatever. So the beauty of the Delight model is that it can be implemented and integrated with any other framework and any other ways of working. So how does it work more concretely? So it is the first step, which is for me fundamental, is when you are thinking about building a new product or a new feature, think about identifying both emotional and functional motivators. I think most companies, and I'm coaching a couple of companies these days, most companies are really good at identifying functional motivators. Like, as I said earlier, like listening to music or booking a flight or looking for a hotel or whatever. These are functional motivators. But as a product leader, think about identifying the lists related to emotional motivators. People want to feel more productive. They want to feel relief. They want to feel secure. They want to provide, maybe protect their privacy, whatever. So these are emotional motivators that need to be listed. So I would say first step, identify both dimensions.
I want to follow up with that because also as a university instructor, this is something I talk about with students from kind of another perspective. The way I think about this is to, as you're using the product, how do you want people to feel? How do you think they want to feel, right? Because I've heard this described other ways. I said, well, no, it's really focused on the aspect of the customer interacting with the product. What are the emotion that goes along with that?
Yeah.
Is that the right way to have this phrase?
Absolutely. Okay. I mean, we want people to feel happy, relaxed, relieved, comfortable using the product. And sometimes also we want user to feel the best version of themselves when they're using the product, like particularly in the B2B world. Sometimes, because I get the comment like, is Delight applicable in B2B or is it more a B2C thing? Yeah. And I'm saying like, it is applicable for B2B because in the B2B world, people are using your product to feel a better version of themselves. And that's one of the components that we want, of course, to implement while using the product. So yes, you're right. And that's actually the first step of the model, which is identifying motivators. The second step is to turn those motivators into product opportunities, meaning that now that I know that my user want to feel relieved or secure or whatever, I need to turn these into what could be implemented in the product in a way that I can address those. I can give you an example. For example, Uber, for example, have been heavily investing into making sure that their client and their users are feeling secure while using an Uber car. And it's been, of course, a big challenge, and they have been investing a lot into implementing features like that. And then they turned this need, the need or the motivator of being secure, into real features. For example, if you are on Uber today, you can activate a feature for tracking so you can allow your partner to track where you are in the path. I use it a lot. For example, I'm traveling and I feel secure as if I'm not lonely, you see, like I'm not alone. I know that my husband is aware of if I want to, of course. So that's one thing. They also enabled other features related to feeling secure. For example, the other day, I would love to share the story because it just happened to me. It's very personal, but it just happened to me. I was on an Uber going from the airport Charles de Gaulle to home. I live in Paris, by the way. And the driver asked me, hey, we're running out of gas. Is it okay if I go to the gas station? And I was like, sure. Can I say no? Right. So we made that turn and we've been waiting on a queue. And guess what happened? I actually got a notification on my phone as well as my watch saying that, hey, you've been stationary for a couple of minutes now. We hope you're okay. In case there's anything you want to notify us about. There is a message that is very reassuring. First, it felt like very personal, very empathetic, but also it's about checking, are you okay? And if
Right.
you're not, press the button, let us know, and we can help. So that was for me, is like, wow, it felt like my mom is checking if I'm home or not, or something. Like it is lovely. So this is the second step of the framework, is identifying, like, from the identified motivators, turn those into product opportunities.
Yep. Okay.
So that's what I call the opportunity space. Once we are at that stage, we've done most of the job, because we already identified great opportunities that will connect with users' emotion. The next step is, of course, to brainstorm ideas that could solve for those opportunities. And I'm pretty sure engineers and team members are really brilliant in identifying opportunities. So I'm not telling you how to brainstorm. It's usually like, this is the easiest part of the process. However, I created something that I call the delight grade. And the delight grade is within this third step of identifying delightful solution, and it's really powerful because it highlights in a grid the emotional motivators and the functional motivators all in the same grid, and then you will take your identified solutions and place them in the grid based on what motivator does it solve for. You see, like, if my feature is solving for functional motivator only, I call this low delight feature. If my solution is solving for an emotional motivator only, there is no functional need at all, then it's a surface delight. And if I have an idea or a solution that could solve for both an emotional motivator and a functional motivator, then I'm in that sweet spot that I call the deep delight. I can give example, of course, but the idea is to classify, categorize your solutions, so you know in your roadmap how much of low delight do I have, how much of deep delight do I have, how much of surface delight. And if you have only low delight, maybe there is some effort to do. So that was the step number 3.
I do think an example might be helpful there, right? So
Yes.
in my mind, I have this grid. On one axis, we have the functional
Yes.
dimensions, other one, the emotional dimensions. And yeah, give us a concrete example
Yes.
of what we might put in.
Yes, I love it. Since we spoke about Spotify, let's take, because
Yes.
it's easier to keep the flow. For a low delight feature, it's a feature that is purely to solve users' problem from a functional perspective. Like, for example, at Spotify, we've been building what we call search by lyric. Search by lyric is the abilities, like when you don't have the exact name of a track, you put random names and you still get the track. This is a low delight feature because, of course, it helps you achieve your goal, which is finding a track or finding a track within a list. So it is, of course, very important, but it is within the low delight feature. Surface delight is what I said, emotional dimension only. And I think the best example here is Wrapped. It's like, Wrapped is purely emotional. Like, what's the functional need behind Spotify Wrapped?
And for those of us who, like me, I don't use Spotify Wrap, apparently. What is Spotify Wrap?
Okay, Spotify Wrapped is that end of year retrospective list that gives you, hey,
yes.
this is what
Okay.
you've been listening to. So it's just a summary saying,
Right.
hey, it's more like to see how cool you are, so that you can share your playlist or the songs you've been listening to throughout the year. And it's purely emotional because people are curious about knowing more about themselves. They want to have information and things that reflects more about themselves. And it's, by the way, for those who don't know as well, like, Wrapped is one of the features that contributes the most in the success of Spotify. It's like a feature that is purely emotional contributed in more than 20% app download just in 2020. There's no other feature that contributed as much, by the way. When it comes to deep delight, now we're talking about features that are, of course, solving for a functional need, but do it in a way that creates some emotion as well. Best examples are Discover Weekly. These are playlists that are built based on your taste, your personality. They are given for you. There is another feature called Collaborative Playlist. It's a way to, of course, discover new content, but in a collaborative way, so you can connect. There is a connection dimension behind it. So it's joining the two words. So these are the examples I could share. However, I want to highlight something very important so people don't get it wrong. I'm not here to say that we should only build like surface delight or deep delight. I even came up with what I call the 50-40-10. 50-40-10 means that the best roadmap would have 50% of low delight. Of course, functionality have to be there, 40% of deep delight, and maybe you can allow some 10% for surface delight if you can. So the success comes from the combination of the three types of delight, not just one of them.
Okay, good to know. We don't have to feel pressure to overdo the deep delight.
Yeah, exactly. So now we're getting to the last step, which is validating those solutions. Because, okay, now we have some idea. We think that they are within this category of delight. How do I make sure that I'm doing it right and I will get this emotional connection that I'm looking for? And what we need to know here is that when we talk about emotion, sometimes there are some risks that could come with that. Because, like, for example, what makes me happy today is not necessarily what will make you happy. And what makes me excited is not what excites me tomorrow. So there's the dimension of inclusion. There's a dimension of making sure that there's no distraction added by that feature. Make sure that there's an impact for business and for users. So the last step is actually a list that I call the Delight Excellence checklist. It's just a checklist, as its name is saying. It's a checklist saying that, hey, does your feature bring impact? Does your feature is not bringing any distraction to the user? Is the feature inclusive enough? Are you bringing delight in a continuous way, or just one time and then let's see you tomorrow or next year or whatever? So it's a list that validates that the delight is going to be implemented in the right way.
Okay, excellent. Thanks for taking us through the framework to think about tangibly how can we add emotional aspects of our product, not just product features in the sense of functional features, but those emotional connections too. Yeah. So as you talk about these emotional connections and the functional connections, this language also appears in jobs to be done. And so I'm used to that framework quite a bit. How do you see relationships between what you've learned and what you've practiced in these organizations and now formulated into the Delight framework and jobs to be done that is seeking that functional job, that social job, that emotional job?
So when I get deeper into the topic of delight, there have been two frameworks that highly inspired me, and they've been a great source of inspiration. Job to be done is one, and the other one is Cannel. Maybe you're familiar with Cannel model as well, because the Cannel model talk about delight, etc.
Right.
However, what triggered me and what really frustrated me is that they are exactly talking about the right topic, but they are not giving us exactly what to do. So the job to be done, for example, is an amazing way of initiating and educating people that, hey, products should be hired not only for functional reasons or functional jobs, but they are also hired for emotional jobs. Like the milkshake story, of course, that everyone is familiar with. Like, people want to feel like they are not lonely, or like getting something they are occupied with. And that's exactly what the theory behind delight as well for tech product. We want to make sure that the product is used and is not only for the functional reason, but also for reassuring, for feeling good, for feeling excited, etc. So it is, yes, a great foundation. For me, job to be done is an amazing foundation, and I'm personally inspired by it. The only limitation that I've seen in the job to be done is that it doesn't really go beyond the explanation of the functional and the emotional and the social part. And I needed to go beyond by giving exactly like this delight grid, the delight checklist, and techniques to apply that in a real tech world.
Okay. So making it more actionable for the people that you've worked with in these organizations to dig deeper. Okay. I know when I've talked to Tony Alwick about jobs to be done, often the topic of segmentation comes up, and he'll say, when you look at the customers you serve now, if we look more closely, we'll probably find customers that have unmet needs still within that are more acute than others. And we target them maybe just with messaging, but maybe in a product that is a little bit more suitable to them. We can really delight them, I'm going to use your language, right, in a more meaningful way, create more value for them and make them more loyal fans, and maybe even expand into a bigger market that is currently underserved by us. Do you think of segmentation as well when you involve this emotional aspect?
Very good question, because when we talk about identifying motivator, there is a theory behind that. And of course, for any product or feature you're building from scratch, you need to know who are you building it for. And of course, when we talk about segmentation, there are different ways of segmenting users. There is what we call the demographic segmentation, which is like, who are the users? They male, female, where are they located, their country? This is the who part. There is a second type of segmentation, which is the behavioral segmentation, which is more about the what. What are they doing? Are they using the product in the morning, in the afternoon? Are they using feature A versus B? So this is the behavioral segmentation. The third segmentation, which I'm more vocal about and an advocate for, which is the motivational segmentation, meaning that why do they use the product? So motivational segmentation is the why that every user or certain users are using product versus others. And it's actually very surprising because I've seen this firsthand while building products like Google Meet or Chrome. People are using the product for different reasons and for different motivators. And it's really important to segment your users based on those motivators. So you can honor them and you can give them the features in a way that satisfies those motivators. For example, for Spotify users, some go to Spotify knowing exactly what track they want to listen to. Like you have a certain album in mind and you want to listen to it. That's one type. Another type could be, I actually have no idea when I want to listen to it today. Please inspire me. It happens to me a lot that I put the random playlist, just give me something nice I could listen to today. That's another type of of users, and another segment of users that you can consider and honor in a different way. So yes, I truly believe that, of course, doing motivational segmentation is a very powerful way that could introduce you to this concept of satisfying functional and motivational and emotional motivators.
Okay. Yeah, I appreciate the addition of that onto how we think about it in jobs that we've done the segmentation, what motivates them to come and use the product. As a counter example of maybe someone who got this wrong, I was thinking back on when our kids were young and we would go to the park. We would often see the leash that was on your child, right? And the job to be done here, the functional job was the park is busy, my kid runs around a lot, or maybe Disney World, we saw them there too, right? It's like I want my kid to get lost in the big crowd. And so I place my kid on a leash. And then over time, it's like you're at the park and you have we never use one of these, but imagine our Labrador on a leash, our dog on a leash, and our child on a leash. And you start feeling like, is this the right thing? And so I think the emotional job there deteriorated. We were at the park last night, and kids are much older now, but we were just looking around going, I don't see any of these in the park as we were out and about. It seems like that was a misfit, right? It's like functional job, understand, smart parent, don't want to lose your kid. But emotionally, I'm not sure I'm treating my kid the right way, right?
Yes.
Obviously, we're going to validate our products and try to get insights from customers if we're actually hitting the mark or not, if we're creating value for them, and if they're responding to us the way that we expected. And now we want to focus in on this emotional dimension as well. How do we know if we got this right? Is this just normal validation, or are there some early clues here? What advice do you have for us?
Yes. So one thing that we did not really address so far is that, and it's actually highly validated by theory and a lot of studies that have been done and conducted by Capgemini, Deloitte, McKinsey, and even Harvard Business Review. Actually, what they studied within those studies that are done very recently, by the way, they studied the impact of emotional connection on product adoption. And they came to the following conclusion, and it's really interesting to see because I've been reading through the reports for weeks, and there is a consensus. There is a huge consensus. The 4 studies concluded that there are 3 big metrics that are heavily impacted by emotional connections. Number 1 is retention. Emotionally connected users are twice more likely to stay longer with your product or within your product, compared to those that are just satisfied, by the way. I mean, the 50% emotionally connected versus satisfied users. The second metric is revenue. Actually, emotionally connected users are twice more likely to buy more products and services from you. And number 3, which is also very important, is referral. Because emotionally connected users are 60% more likely to actively talk and recommend your product to their friends, family, and community. So could you imagine, just imagine for a second, if you invest in such a topic and you double referral, revenue, and retention, this is, first of all, quantifiable, measurable, but also it's huge. So what I want to say maybe just now, I mean, these are the results from the studies. So just to back up with studies and research. Now, if we go back to the practical world, what I've seen so far is like if you invest in emotional connection and bringing delightful product, for sure you see more word of mouth. People will talk, will tweet about things that they love. They will share. If we go back to the Wrapped feature by Spotify, what made the success of Wrapped is not that the fact that people are watching their video or their recap, is by the fact that they are sharing it, massively sharing it, because they love it. And we also see that when we invest in emotional connection, people are staying longer. Like think about Apple, for example, why Apple is having such big success and why is it a success story is because people, when they feel so loyal to the brand. And I've seen an article the other day saying that 90% of Apple users want to stay within the Apple ecosystem. Of course, there's the ecosystem that helps them to stay, but also because they feel loyal to the brand, they feel emotionally connected with the brand. So I truly believe that, of course, delight is a way to stand out and get yourself out in such a crowded digital market, but it's also a way to allow your users to stay longer, recommend your product, and love it.
I like the addition of the metrics that you shared on retention, revenue, and referrals. And I would be tempted to add that to your grid as we're looking at those functions that create an emotional aspect too, whether it's the low, the deep, and like about which ones might be contributing to those metric as well, right? Or like as you pointed out, the Spotify Wrap is actually something that makes things more collaborative. Okay. Interesting to think through how to purposely build these in. How have you seen this take shape mechanically in the organizations you serve? The companies you were at were probably using some form of sprints, doing Scrum, I imagine. Is this part of the normal planning that do we think about it early on in the backlog and just it's part of the work? Or do you see teams saying, okay, this sprint is going to be all about, or this epic is going to be all about emotional aspects. We're really going to focus on this here. How do you see teams doing this? Or how would you like to see them do it?
Okay, it actually depends on teams and it also depends on companies. And I'm going to share at least from my perspective and from my own experience. So for my experience at Google Meet, I've been the PM for Delight. I know that this is rare. Not all company can allow having a PM for Delight. But for me, I was responsible for making sure that Google Meet provide a delightful experience. So everything we've been doing was toward making sure that the experience is delightful. And by the way, this is where I learned most of the concept, and this is what I learned and get deep into the concept that I'm talking about today. However, I don't want to talk a lot about this experience because I know it's rare, not everyone can relate to. Let's talk through other examples, like my time at Google Chrome or my time at Spotify. At Spotify, Delight has been competing with functionality all the time, and that's what most companies and most startups are dealing with today. So I had a roadmap, I had a backlog, and we've been operating, of course, in an agile mode, but we had a backlog where we had very functional features competing with completely non-functional features. What helped us prioritize both of these aspects was the culture. So we had a culture of product that, of course, promote the need for not only having functional features, but also creating a brand and a personality for the product. We wanted to have a product that had a great brand and well perceived. And for example, also in some of the company I worked on, we had some product principles and some pillars that have been called Delight, because we want to make sure that features that we build are aligned with the principles and the concept of delight. So for those who are listening to us today and they are in organization like I've been at Spotify, for example, and they are sitting on a backlog where features are competing, like functionality is competing with delight, like emotional features. What I'm saying is that try to make space for both. It's like, of course, and that's why I said earlier the 50-40-10 is a guiding policy. Of course, we need to have functionality in the roadmap, but make sure that we also allocate space. So, for example, you can have one deep delight every quarter and one surface delight every year or something like that. Make sure that this is repetitive and part of your routine.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so that's very helpful. Just integrating it into the development culture, right? That we are paying attention to the emotional connection of our products
Yeah.
could make the opportunities for that and making sure we're not discounting that value. This really is, when you look across products, it's relatively easy. I'm stretching, but to get to parity. And some products are simply the Me Too product, right? Where we're copying from the competitors and trying to figure out what sticks. But products that make this emotional connection, they're the ones that build brand loyalty, that people
Yeah.
follow, that people, as you
Yes.
shared the
Yeah.
metrics on, they recommend, right? So,
Yeah. I usually use this example like if I ask you to tell me about the best meal you had, let's say in the last 3 months, if you think for it a little bit, you will probably not share with me the meal that honored your hunger or the one that was maybe the most beautiful. It's very likely you remember the meal that made you feel good or evoked emotion in you. And that's exactly the case for product. When people, I ask them, like, I provide workshops, and I usually start the workshop by asking people, tell me about the best product they have. And then when we dig into why did they pick that product, it's so most often about the fact that they feel good while using the product.
yep, absolutely. Good. Well, I have enjoyed the discussion and being able to focus on the emotional connection that products have the opportunity to make. And that really does enormously create the value opportunity for our products as well to impact customers in a more meaningful way. I'll mention briefly the training that I do as well. This makes the podcast possible. I started this podcast because I wanted to give back to the product management community, and I had been already doing training, and I've just continued that. So I do help individual product managers, product VPs, and senior leaders in organizations as well, just do a better job innovating themselves. And I'll speak directly to product VPs for a moment. If you have product managers that you want to upscale, you want to improve their performance, you want to maybe just give them some love because the organization hasn't been providing proper caring and feeding for them, and they might not feel like they're getting that love. I have a really good system for that. It's called the Rapid Product Mastery Experience. Simply go to productmasterynow.com and you'll find more information about those options. Lots of good companies I've had the pleasure of working with to help them with that. We do like innovation quotes around here. Nesrine, what quote did you bring for us, and what does it mean to you?
So the quote I brought with me today is about whether B2C or B2B, delight is essential in every what I call B2H industry or B2H product. Let me explain. I get this question quite often, and we touched on this a little bit, like, is delight a B2C thing or does it have its place on B2B word? And I came with this concept of B2H, which is business to human, because what I believe is that if there are human beings behind the product, if your users are human being, not robot or AI agent or whatever, then they deserve their emotion to be honored. And I truly believe that delight applies in both words. However, if your product is used by a machine or a robot and no human aspect behind, then maybe forget about everything I said today. So this is what I want to highlight today.
That's right. That's good. If you're building an API between two systems, maybe not so important. But yeah, I totally relate to this. The B2B environment, the people using the system are people, are humans, right? And back to that emotional aspect, I think something that's important for both B2B to B2C, we want to feel good about the choice that we made and in choosing that product in the first place, right? If you choose a product and you start feeling like, it does the job for me, but I don't feel great about using it, something's wrong. And you want to feel good about, I made a smart choice. I was responsible in this choice. Particularly important for B2B when there's people whose jobs are on the line if they make a bad choice.
Actually, that was the quote from me. Now I want to share and steal a
Good.
quote from Jeff Bezos, who said something very similar. I mean, I'm not going to say it exactly how he said it, but he said, we don't want to work only on things that will change over the next 10 years. We want to be also working on things that will remain for the next 10 years. And I think the topic of emotional connection will remain for at least the next hundreds of years. So these are the topics that will remain, whether with the age of AI or not. We'll still have to make our product to feel human.
Yeah, I sure hope so. I think we all hope so. So thank you so much for sharing both quotes and for being a wonderful guest, helping us think about the emotional aspects of our products and the impact that makes. How can people find out more about the work that you're doing and about your book as well?
Yes, so first they can reach out, they can find me on LinkedIn, that's where I'm mostly active. I also started a newsletter on Substack called Product Delight. So for those who want to have real delightful stories published regularly, they can subscribe on Substack. Otherwise, yes, I recently published a book called Product Delight. It's available on Amazon. And if they need help with getting the book, they can, of course, reach out to me directly on LinkedIn. So excited to share more about that.
Okay. And there's a website I found for you too by your name.
Yes.
A good place to go as well.
Yes, they can reach out to my website, but also if they want to have more detail about the book, the website for the book is called productdelightbook.com. Productdelightbook.com.
Okay.
That's where they find everything they need about the book. And otherwise, LinkedIn is the best way to reach out.
Okay. Find you on LinkedIn. We'll put all those links in the show notes to make it easy for everyone to find as well. If you want more information on the book, productdelightbook.com is a good place to go. Nesrine, I appreciate you being with us. Thank you for sharing your insights and experience.
Thank you, Chad. I was very happy being with you today.
And listeners, if you want to find the written version of everything we just discussed, including those links, simply go to productmasterynow.com/560. As always, keep innovating.
Thank you for listening to Product Mastery Now, where product leaders and managers gain product mastery through practical knowledge, influence, and confidence. By listening, you are becoming a product master, creating products customers love. Find additional resources at productmasterynow.com. Keep innovating.